Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. I'm Raffi, and as always, joined by Theodore and Davian, also as always. So I'm just going to cut the intro short. I hope you guys are doing well. We'll just cut right to the chase because there's a lot of news that's happened the past week, which is great because we're in the NFL, NHL, and the off season, so it is a very bare time. But luckily, we have a ton of news, so let's just dive right in. Few quick housekeeping things I want to mention. Bill Russell passed away, I believe, yesterday as we're recording Monday or Sunday. Rest in peace. We'll talk a bit more about him in the future shows and talk about where he ranks among some of the NBA greats and all that stuff. So thoughts and prayers with his family and all of his friends. Another thing we want to mention as well before we get into is AJ Brown tweeted July 31st. Basically, all four of us got the same contract, and I'm the only one who got traded. Yeah, I keep believing it was me. Anywho, go Birds. So this is very clear that AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel got paid, Terry McLaurin got paid, DK Metcalf got paid. AJ Brown did get paid, but he got traded. So there's a little shot right there. Once again, we'll talk about it over the next few weeks as we get closer
And,
to
don't forget, Raffi. DJ Chark got paid more than all of them.
Christian Kirk also got a bag too. Don't forget.
Kirk, sorry, yeah, that's the name I was looking for.
Christian Kirk thus is better than DK Metcalf, and hopefully DK Metcalf doesn't know where I live because that would be very scary if he decided he showed up. But anyways, before we get into more dumb jokes for the rest of the podcast, let's get into some more serious talk. So first off, we have a verdict from Judge Sue Robinson. I believe it's Sue Robinson. I believe that's her first name. But she made a ruling on the Deshaun Watson case. She has ruled that it will be 6 games for Deshaun Watson, which I will just say is basically a third of what Calvin Ridley got for betting on his team. He bet on the Falcons. That's like the big thing. He bet on the Falcons, and he was away from the team, took a leave of absence. I won't get into that, though. I've done this spiel a million times, it feels like. But anyways, I want to hear your thoughts. I also want to mention I've had some conversations with people, and they've been thinking this is a final decision. What happens now is Roger Goodell will take this information, and he will decide whether or not the 6 games is sufficient or not. A lot of people are saying, oh, he's going to look around and see what the public opinion is, which is not good. But anyways, I want to open the floor to you guys. Other thing I want to mention before I open the floor to you guys is Sue Robinson. This is a new thing that the NFL has added into their system to determine punishment and all that stuff with severe cases. I think it's kind of stupid at the end of the day because it got rid of Roger Goodell making the final decision, but Roger Goodell is still making the final decision, or he's going to appoint someone to make that decision. So, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts before we just dive right into this.
I think it's an attempt, this whole judge thing. I think it's Goodell's way of trying to shift any criticism away from himself. Obviously, it's never going to work because I think we all know who's in charge. But that's, in my eyes, the only reason why this would happen. I think at the end of the day, it's very clear that Goodell is still just directly talking with the 32 people who pay his paycheck.
I need a masseuse after this decision. Like, I'm sorry. I'm a Patriots fan, okay? Tom Brady fan. When Tom Brady got suspended for 4 games for allegedly deflating the balls, it was never really proven. I mean, and then they had picks taken away. The Texans were never punished in this decision. The Browns were never punished in this.
I think they were punished, I believe, to some extent. I think they had to pay a fine.
Well, fine.
I'm sorry. I think that was private, though. Nothing official.
Okay. Yeah, like, I still think that there's more that could have been done. There's more that should have been done. I hope that Roger Goodell takes this and really looks at appealing, because basically what he needs to do is he needs to appeal the decision. Then it goes back to the judge, and then the judge kind of decides whether that appeal goes through or not. Other than that, I have really no other comments. We've talked about this guy before. Yes, technically, he settled almost every single case. So under court law, he is innocent. But the thing is that we've seen time and time again the NFL really kind of ignore this innocence clause and really say you're guilty if the public opinion says so. So if you're gonna follow that theory, then follow it all the way through. Don't try to sugar it up just because it's Deshaun Watson. Okay, the public doesn't like him either way. Sure, you might have some Browns fans that are a fan of him, some old Texans fans that remember him going off. Other than that, I think it was not a good decision. I hope Roger Goodell looks into it. And I'll just leave it at that. I don't know how many games he's supposed to be suspended for, but I'll leave it at that.
You'd have to
Maybe.
anticipate it's a year. And I just want to mention before I throw to you, Theodore, that to those people who are like, oh, he's already served a year, yada, 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 that was on his own will. He didn't want to play for the Texans. He wanted a trade. So this past season does not count for his suspension in
Right.
any regard. Those games are just completely different than these games. He chose willingly to sit out those games. This is a suspension. But Theodore, your thoughts?
Yeah, circling back to Davian's point, because he kind of hit it spot on the head about court of public opinion. Ben Roethlisberger, for the rest of his career after that, I believe 2010 it was, incident, was never able to shake that reputation. Karl Malone.
In his final game. But then
Karl Malone, what he did was much worse, obviously. I think we all know. There's a clear difference. But he, never able to shake that. Like, someone brings up Karl Malone, that's immediately what you think about. The only person to ever shake something like this reputation-wise is Kobe. And I think it's pretty clear that Deshaun Watson is not Kobe Bryant. This is something that absolutely will haunt him with the rest of his career and the rest of his life, if you ask me. And one thing I'm very excited for is when he makes his return, week 7 and beyond, how the NFL teams react, because this is something that, I'm a New York guy, Davian is too. Sam Darnold, 2019, says he's seeing ghosts. NFL teams, opposing teams, as he enters the field, play the Ghostbusters theme. Like, just of all the stuff that teams can do to get into Shaun Watson's head, like, I just feel like it's got to have a mental toll on him, and I think it'll be very fun to see if maybe the NFL just outright stops stuff from happening or what direction it goes in.
I mean, the only thing that's not hurting to Deshaun Watson is his pockets, because he lost like $300,000 with getting suspended 6 games. He's still getting $230 million guaranteed.
It's insane.
I still cannot believe that the Browns actually were that down bad to do well. They finally had a taste of success, and we're like, we're going to become we went from the lovable losers to like public enemy number 1 in the span of one off season.
Right.
And absolutely just threw Baker Mayfield to the side. I'm really intrigued to see what happens going forward with Deshaun Watson. It's going to be definitely something interesting to keep tabs on. I wouldn't be shocked if teams just like to target him. If teams take some targeting penalties against him just to screw around with them or something. I don't know how this is going to go down.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's a correct decision that gets made in the process, but then again, it's the NFL, and whatever the owners say, that's kind of how things will go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of Deshaun Watson. We'll give more updates as we find out more news about what Roger Goodell is going to say about it. And yes, so moving on, we'll go to a team that was in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, the Miami Dolphins, who earlier today, August 2nd, as we are recording this podcast in the evening after MLB Trade Deadline, which we'll talk about right after this segment, the Miami Dolphins were found to be tampering with the love of Davian's life, Tom Brady, and head coach Sean Payton, where they both retired for who knows why. And apparently that's for tampering. Apparently the Dolphins have been speaking to Tom Brady since like 2019, I think 2019, 2020, and 2021. They've been trying to organize this huge idea of getting Tom Brady to be an owner and also being a player as well. And this whole spiel. I love some of the skits that I've seen online of Tom Brady talking to himself as different branches of ownership, general manager, and Tom Brady himself, the player. But essentially what's come out of this, the Dolphins now have to forfeit their next year first-round pick. They still have a first-round pick from a trade, I believe, with the Dolphins or the Niners that they made.
From the Niners, yeah.
From the Niners. So they still have a first-round pick, so you're kind of still not punishing them too much. They also lose a third-round pick in 2024. Stephen Ross, owner of the Dolphins, is not allowed to go to any Dolphins games for the first 6 games, which is really nothing. And then he's also losing $1.5 million, which to all of us is, oh my gosh, like that's insane. To him, his net worth I saw online was over $8 billion. So this is like, Theodore, I'm taking $10. Theodore, I'm taking $10 from you. Okay.
Yeah,
obviously, you're not going to want to give me the $10, but it's like,
Yeah.
But
It's also fascinating to tell a man who owns the team that no, you can't watch your own team's game. The thing that I'm interested in though is because and this is kind of hilarious and goes to show the NFL's very fair legal practices. The fact that now he has been punished more than Dan Snyder ever has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, this guy is like, first off, F him, okay? He's the reason why Brady went to Tampa, okay? There's no other reason. I'm telling you, Brady was constantly visiting Miami, and he said, okay, I'm going to settle in Tampa. Screw him for doing that. I think Brady's going to be found with, like, all the tampering allegations once he retires, and they do, like, a full investigation on him. They can find he, like, tried to tamper with Gronk, Bell, Edelman at some point, I guess. Like, the list goes on and on. As player-to-player tampering, I think in the NFL shouldn't apply as much as in the NBA, really. But
player
for
tampering, I feel like happens all the time though. Like I feel like that's kind of just hard to avoid because even a player
right,
sending like, "Hey, you're a free agent. I mean, I'm having so much fun in Miami. Like you should come." Like that could just be in a
there's so
joke.
many
That could just be
players
fun.
too. Like you're gonna have
They're
to
all
like
a lot of the NFL is
rookies.
just from the player's perspective, it's a boys' club. From ownership, it's a different boys' club. But
Right.
like at the end of the day, even if Myles Garrett is bashing a helmet on Mason Rudolph, they're still all just like boys. So it's like player to player just saying like, "Hey, you should come here. Like the weather is great." Like
Yeah.
you're kind of just memeing him too. So you're not like actually saying like, "Oh, come here. Here's
Yeah.
$1 million. Here's the car like
Exactly.
college recruiting level stuff." But continue on.
Yeah. So I think it was the right decision at the end of the day. Yes, it was worse. Like, look, the way I see it is, at some point, the NFL is gonna have to start fixing itself, so we can't keep comparing like the new suspensions to the old. I just hope that this precedent continues. Like, I hope that really Roger Goodell rethinks his decision about Deshaun Watson, and then that's the precedent that continues forth. Other than that, got nothing to say. F him for doing that. I'm sure Saints fans are as pissed as I am. And yeah, that's all I got. Oh, one thing. Hello, everyone. It's Davian. I'm currently editing this podcast that you're currently watching. I'd like to apologize for a mistake I made. I mentioned Floyd in reference to the former Dolphins coach. I was trying to reference Brian Flores. I was, in my defense, for my mistake, I was sick during this podcast. I had a fever that I did not know of before going into the podcast, so I apologize for the mistake. Raffi, I know you're probably watching this. Please, I recommend that you name this podcast the Fever Podcast. Other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed the podcast so far, and enjoy the rest of the podcast. Peace, guys. The guy joked about tanking with Floyd, Coach Floyd.
Flores.
Yeah. What is that? Like, is the NFL going to do anything about that? I will say that, him, Floyd, and, he's filing a lawsuit against the NFL. So I think these findings will help him in his case against the NFL. What that brings forth, I don't really know, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything proven. I think there's just some statements that were thrown
Yeah,
around.
yeah. It was just
But
like,
there wasn't a
there was a
direct
joke
like
made.
Brian Flores, here is $100,000 if you lose the
Yeah.
game. So there wasn't actually some incentivized losing. At least that was found. It was just some like text like, "Hey, like I mean, Tua looks really good this year. Maybe we should. It'd be a shame if we lost the rest of the games this season." So there was definitely that as well. Another thing I want to mention too is hearing an NFL team get punished for tampering is hilarious because it feels like every free agency we get all these hockey deals right when they happen, and it's like, what happened? It's like, well, they all just signed right away. Like it was just a quick meeting, and like we all know it's tampering. So NHL they don't care about tampering. NBA doesn't seem to care too much, but it looks like the NFL is going to be much more strict on that, as we can clearly see. Davian, don't put your head too far down because I still want to hold on to the conspiracy theory that Bill Belichick sending a congratulations text to Brian Daboll while forgetting to realize that it was actually Brian Flores set up this whole conundrum of events, and this is just Bill Belichick doing a 300 IQ play to get back at Tom Brady and to hurt the Dolphins. I just want to believe that because I think that'd be absolutely hilarious if that was the case.
I hope so too, because otherwise Bill Belichick looks stupid, and Bill Belichick not a stupid guy. Okay, that's why I'm wearing a hoodie today in the beginning of August. Okay, it's the Belichick vibes. That's what we gotta go with, I should put the hoodie up as well.
You also need to hold a monotone voice and not smile at any time for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
I also feel like your room should be dark. I feel like Belichick would live in darkness, if you ask me.
Move with bats,
I don't know if you have a dog too, but if your dog wants to substitute at any point for you, that'd also be much appreciated. Peter, do you have any thoughts on the whole?
Yeah, I do, because this, in my eyes, is one of the dumbest things that all the leagues do. Because the NBA, actually, for reference, has I think the Bucks have lost second-round picks 2 years in a row now. The Heat as well.
I swear, if the Knicks lose any picks, I'm gonna flip.
But it's like, how is it that all these leagues are trying to embrace all this social media stuff, all this, the players having the power, the connectivity of the league? Like, if you're gonna do all that and punish teams for tampering, it makes no sense. Like, I honestly would love to see just players get openly recruited all throughout the season by opposing teams. Like the Oakland A's.
I think there should be allowed. I'm gonna cut you off right there. I think there should be like a tampering period, like the NHL during like COVID and stuff, because you couldn't meet like in person or flights and all that stuff. I think they had a 1 week period where players were allowed to go to other teams, meet with other teams before free agency, talk with them, come to potentially terms on a deal, and they got rid of it this past season, which doesn't make any sense because it's gonna happen regardless. But I think the NFL and just all sports install like a 1 or 2 week buffer period where you're allowed to tamper and talk with players before free agency opens. I think that just kind of gets rid of the whole recruiting and the real extreme tampering, in my opinion.
Tampering should not be a thing. Look, the Chargers, right? The players are always complaining about the lack of fans. Imagine if every time next year the Chargers went on the road, teams openly were recruiting Justin Herbert to request a trade to their team. Like, just think about how much it motivates you as an owner to improve the conditions. Like, I feel like it raises that level of competition and also connectivity within the league. And it's just like, because we know tampering's happening all the time, and I just feel like all these leagues are being so selective in what stuff they're punishing. Like, the Lakers did so much tampering to get AD back in the day.
What?
Like,
What's up, bro?
just willingly wanted to go there. I mean, I saw nothing wrong with that move.
Same
Just
thing
like
with Jalen Brunson.
It was crazy how the Nets managed to get KD, Kyrie, and James Harden all on the same team together and just work things out and balance all the chemistry, all the emotions of the three to play a good 20 games with each other. I don't know how they did it, how they got all these guys to fit like that.
Yeah, there's so many, like, it just opens up so many coincidences, like how the Knicks just happened to hire the father
early 2010s Miami Heat. Chris Bosh, D Wade, LeBron, like, oh, let's just banana boat go down to Miami in it.
I don't know. I'd say open the market to tampering. Let openly invite teams to tamper. I think it'll create a fun.
I feel like I say this just as a Knicks fan.
I feel like that's just such a distraction, and you guys are talking about like the Knicks could actually tamper with anything, like.
Fact. Like, who's Jalen Brunson? Never heard of that guy. What are we talking about? Yeah, no, we hired his dad because he had good credentials.
Exactly.
He did visit the Heat. Okay, he did make a visit to the Miami Heat for a tryout. So there you go. No tampering there.
So wait,
Adam Silver does thing.
Other team in Jalen Brunson happened to look. That's a crazy coincidence. Ask me.
I think so too, Theodore. I think I completely agree.
Yes.
I feel like this is a battle that I'm going to lose because it's 2 against 1. So unless there's any other thoughts on the Miami Dolphins, we'll go into the big event that also took place today, MLB Trade Deadline.
I love the Yankees. Have my heart. Thank you.
I heart New York.
I didn't even get to finish my opening line before.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. And the Yankees did good. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, great. All right. Well, we all know how this is going to go for the next 10, 12 minutes, the final 10, 12 minutes of the show. But anyways, we'll just hop right into it. We're not going to talk about the Yankees first because there's a bigger deal that happened that didn't involve the Yankees. Although the Yankees are a baseball team, and this happened in the MLB, so the Yankees, MLB, conspiracy theory. But regardless, Juan Soto, after turning down a $440 million contract by the Washington Nationals, got traded to the San Diego Padres. This trade was very, very interesting to see how it went down because there was Eric Hosmer who got traded to the Padres, to the Nationals. He had a no trade clause. He's like, I'm not going to the last place in Nationals. I want to go to the playoffs. And he struck down the trade. And this would have been absolutely hilarious because I'm sure he's still a solid player. But like for him to strike down getting Juan Soto would have been absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
But luckily, the Padres were able to substitute Luke Voigt in for them, first baseman Luke Voigt. And just imagine your teammate just not like stabbing you in the back, but you're okay, like thanks. Yeah, now I gotta go to the last place. Nationals. But regardless, essentially the trade was Juan Soto and Josh Bell, who's a first baseman, who was for the Nationals and now on the Padres, for left-handed pitcher Mackenzie Gore, outfielder Robert Hessel III, shortstop CJ Abrams, outfielder James Wood, right-handed pitcher Jarlin Susana, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, first baseman Luke Voigt. A lot of solid prospects that the Nationals got back. I think they got a lot back in return. Jeff Passan, the great Jeff Passan. If you watch the Pat McAfee show, broke it down very nicely where the Nationals got a really good return and got the kind of talent you'd want in return for Juan Soto. I think for a guy that was going to walk anyways in free agency eventually, I think the Nationals did really well with this trade.
Absolutely. And it's hard because a lot of teams ended up dropping out of the race. Like the Yankees, I think it became pretty evident would not be able to keep up, for example. So, because trades always are just so inconsistent in how much is given up. Like, you could look at NFL players of the same caliber and because NFL trades are obviously a little more straightforward. One guy can be worth a third-round pick, another guy can be worth 2 firsts, and there's really not often a lot of.
Carson Wentz got more than Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Both times, Carson Wentz got more than what Matt Ryan got.
Yeah, I think that's just
Dan Darnold got more than Matt Ryan too. But continue on. We won't hop down this rabbit hole.
We need more self-depreciating Falcons fan jokes.
Trust me, we'll get into it.
Yep,
It'll
we
be
do.
so much fun this season. It's gonna be so much fun. The Falcons, the Cubs. We'll get into it in a bit. The Blackhawks. It's gonna be a great sports year for Mr. Raffi. But Theodore, continue on with your point.
Yeah, so Washington is in a good spot as a franchise, I think, because I think we can trust the people that they've hired. They've done a good job of building up a winner. We saw them contend a couple years with Harper. We saw them be able to retool after Harper was gone.
They won the World Series the year after Harper.
They just really Soto, as good of a player as he is, I don't think he's the generational talent that some people tout him to be. And I really think that it's very likely that one of the players in this deal can net them someone who can be near Soto's level. So I think it's just about, building up the rest of the team, and in 5 years they could very well be ready to compete. If I'm watching
23. Soto is 23, but yeah, you look at a lot of these other pieces, they're all like 18, 19, 20. Like they're all decently young players that, although right now may not be as good, solid pieces, definitely have the potential over the next few years to really develop and blossom into really solid MLB players. So we'll see what happens with that. Some other moves, unless Davian, you want to mention anything, but
no, you don't hit everything on the head. No.
Joey Gallo goes over to the Dodgers. I know you two are very, very bummed about that because I know you guys were planning on getting matching Joey Gallo jerseys and wearing them on the podcast next week. So unfortunately, you guys are going to have to hold off on that. But I want to get your thoughts on that just so you guys can have a little Yankees talk.
Great move. That's it. I have nothing else to say.
Yeah, great move. First of all, I kind of feel bad for Joey Gallo. Everything that's come out of him talking about his time in New York, because this even goes back a couple weeks before today. Like, he just seems so remorseful that it didn't work out. He really wanted to succeed as a Yankee. It's hard to succeed in that kind of atmosphere, which is also why I'm pretty confident he'll fail in LA. I think there's that he can pick it up. I think he needs to regroup, get himself back to a Texas or a Colorado, and When it's like that, I'll absolutely be rooting for him to succeed. One thing that's interesting, Yankees get back LA's number 15 prospect. He's gotten absolutely lit up at the AA level this year. So again, probably a player who just needs a change of scenery, like Gallo does, and maybe he'll develop into something good, or most likely he'll probably develop into another trade piece for us to get.
You mentioned Texas. I don't know why you chose to mention Colorado, because if there's 3 guarantees in life, it's death, taxes, and the Colorado Rockies doing absolutely nothing during the trade deadline. Don't think they made a move last year. They didn't make a move this year either. I don't know what that team is doing. They have Chris Bryant, my boy, miss you, but they don't do anything. It's like, come on,
Right?
it's like the poking meme. Like, come on.
Didn't they let Trevor walk? Right? Wasn't that? Did they trade him?
No, they let him walk, I believe.
Yeah, they could have traded him, let him walk. Yeah, that's a poorly ran team right there.
Absolutely. So another thing I want to mention, Trey Mancini got traded finally by the Orioles. Just didn't meet the timeline. Really sad. I mean, he fought colon cancer with the team. Fan favorite. It was a matter of time. They got a good amount of value. And honestly, I just want to mention once again that the Orioles are only 2.5 games out of the wild card. Their manager and owner, I believe, one of them came out and said that, yes, they were in the wild card race, but they were also accepting, like, we don't want to just make the wild card. We want to win the wild card. We want to win our division. We want to go far in the playoffs, which is the right mentality to have. I like that idea where it's like, we're not there yet, so let's just sell off some assets. Let's recoup, and let's just build ourselves so next year, year after, we're even better. We can actually not just say, hey, we made the first round of the playoffs. Nice work. Like, no, we're actually going to go on a deep run. So I have a lot of respect for the Orioles for that. I just want to mention, too, that there's 6 teams within the second wildcard spot. Now, the MLB playoffs expanded to 3 wildcard teams, rather, this upcoming season. So there's that. And the Tampa Bay Rays are the second wildcard team. And there's 5 teams behind them, all within 3 games, the White Sox being the final one, or 51-51 at 500, 3 games out of the Tampa Bay Rays. So it's definitely going to be a really fun race, even with the Orioles dropping out. Somehow the Red Sox are still fighting, but we'll see what happens. But your guys' thoughts on Trey Mancini?
I think the Orioles are a team that reminds me a lot of my Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oh, my goodness.
Obviously, you can't trade picks in the MLB, which, first of all, makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't get why.
I don't get that either. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if a team was just like, here, take my first to 40-round picks for this guy?
And I think that's why, because I think, they are worried that a team will get so far back in the prospect, in the farm system rankings, if picks are allowed to be traded. Regardless, though, the Orioles have done just an incredible job of stocking up good young talent. As a Yankees fan, I think I can fully expect them to be contending with us and Tampa, because Tampa's another well-ran organization. I think the 3 of us will be very good baseball teams for a while. And trading Mancini makes sense. Sam Presti said it best. We don't want to just make an appearance in the postseason. We want to make an arrival. I think the Orioles are going to be a force to be reckoned with in 2023.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention this, too, before Dave, if you want to shift anything for the MLB trade deadline as a whole.
No, got nothing much to say. I'm not, like I've said this before, I'll say it again. Not a major baseball fan. I think some teams did well. I think some teams, like, I use my, analytical skills compared to, like, other sports. So, like, the Rockies, I feel like, didn't do too great, didn't make any moves. I feel like teams need to make moves during the trade deadline. It doesn't matter. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're going to win it all with the team that you have or you're going to lose it all with the team you have. You got to continue to make moves. This is the best time to make moves. And it's the best time to really get fans still interested. So if you're, like, winning it all, but, like, fans aren't coming in, so, like, the Chargers, for example, like, I would have traded for some, like, big name if, the Chargers were in the MLB, but, they're not, luckily. And, yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, too. I read an article earlier today. It's probably Jeff Passan, because Jeff Passan is arguably the only person. Him and Kirkjian are the only guys that get me into baseball. But regardless, someone wrote an article earlier today for ESPN and broke down that since 2015, the winner of the World Series has had at least one player that they trade for at the trade deadline who made a significant play or had a significant postseason run to help them win the World Series, aside from the 2020 Dodgers. But you can make the argument that they signed like Mookie Betts and all those additions as well in the offseason. That's like with the Mets too. They didn't really do too much this trade deadline, But then again, in the grand scheme of things, you think about what they did in free agency this past offseason.
Right.
Those were kind of their trade deadline moves. So
They got
those were their
from the Pirates, actually. It was a little before the deadline, but he's a Yankees fan. I got to say, I'm very scared of what Cohen is doing across the bridge in Queens.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just want to mention before we wrap up, it makes no sense to me why teams are just like, I'm going to just trade all my assets. I'm going to tank in baseball. It makes no sense. I looked at the past 10 years of MLB draft classes since like 2010, 2011. Actually, that's like 12 years now. Jeez, time flies. The hit rate on first round picks and even like the top 10 is just so unknown. And it's just so poor because you're drafting guys at 18 and they're not going to play likely for another like 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I don't really like that.
Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, all these guys, Juan Soto, for example, they were recruited from the other countries of the world. They're not getting drafted. Then you have Bryce Harper. He was taken late first round, I think. You also had Mike Trout, the greatest baseball player of this generation. He got taken at 24, 25 in the MLB draft. So it's no sure thing. It makes no sense to me why teams are like, I want to tank. I want to ruin my financial profits. I mean, they probably have so many businesses where it doesn't matter too much. This is just for fun. But I don't get it. We'll get into this on another episode, but I just want to mention that tanking in baseball is the dumbest thing ever. It's not like hockey, basketball. Like Zion Williamson, that's a perfectly fine player to tank for because it's Zion Williamson. That's a player that's going to impact your team right away. The tank for Tua, when that was tank for Trevor. Those are players that, although haven't quite shaped out yet, those are those kind of assets that you can plug and play that will benefit your team right away. MLB, you're tanking for a guy. You might be winning a World Series in 8 years. You might still suck in 8 years. So it's like, it doesn't make sense unless there's a generational can't miss guy, which
usually rarely happens.
You don't see that in baseball.
Other than like I guess Ohtani.
What was that, Theodore?
Other than like Shohei Ohtani.
But
like
he was recruited too. He wasn't even drafted.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Who would have thought that Mike Trout was that generational guy? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so hard to pick him out. Like, you really have a sure thing. Like, even this year, there was like a debate about who would go number 1 in the draft.
But then again, like let's be honest here. How many of those guys that got taken in like top 5 are actually going to play a significant amount of MLB games? Probably like one of them. Through like the past research that I've done, like probably 1, maybe 2 of the guys in the top 10 are actually going to be impact players for their MLB team, or even make it to the MLB.
Remember, the Mets took Kumar Rocker at 10 last year. He didn't even sign.
Exactly.
He's a Colorado Rocky now.
Right. So it's just like, that's just my whole little spiel about that. We'll get into it more in future podcasts because we're currently over time, and I don't want to run this podcast too much longer than it already is. But we hope you enjoyed all of our breakdown. Very busy week, but that's just how we like it here at the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. Once again, if you like our longer videos, be sure to keep watching these and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You like the shorter ones, fan reaction stuff, I have one coming up that should be up by the time you're watching this. Hello. Hope you enjoyed it. Those have been doing well. I hope you guys continue to like those. Those will keep going up. And if you just want to see like short 1-3 minute meme reaction videos, be sure to follow us on TikTok, Benchwarmer Sports. Don't forget it. For Theodore, for Davian, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed this episode and have a great rest of your week. Until next time, see ya.
Peace.